Welcome to the Explainer. So, close your eyes for just a second. Imagine transporting yourself to a crisp autumn morning. The sun hasn't even come up yet, and you're standing at a 140-year-old family-owned cider mill. The morning fog is kind of settling over these rolling apple orchards, and the leaves are absolutely glowing in brilliant shades of red, orange, and gold. Today, we're exploring the last press. We're diving deep into the history, the true craftsmanship, and the survival of one of the last family-owned cider mills in America. Let's get right into it.
There's a perfect saying for this. Every autumn begins with a single apple, but every tradition begins with the people willing to preserve it. That really sets the stage for our pre-dawn scene, doesn't it? Picture being inside this historic mill. The smell of cinnamon, cloves, and fresh apples literally fills the crisp air right beneath these massive, antique oak beams. You've got wooden crates just overflowing with freshly harvested apples, all waiting to be transformed. And there's the aging cider maker, maybe a fourth or fifth generation owner, slicing open the very first apple of the season.
Which brings us to Section 1, the taste of autumn. Over the last 140 years, this place has undergone an absolutely remarkable evolution. Think back a century ago. The founder originally built this mill just to serve local apple growers during the harvest. It was a rural necessity. But fast forward to the mid-20th century, and boom, we hit the mill's busiest decades. We're talking literal wagon loads of apples rolling in, families waiting in line, huge community harvest festivals. And now, today, it stands as this incredibly rare, surviving, independent family tradition. It went from a basic processing facility to the beating heart of the entire region.
And for the folks living there, this meant something deeply personal. As one regular customer put it, you always knew autumn had arrived when the cider mill opened its doors. Long before we had supermarkets selling mass-produced bottled juice all year round, going to the mill wasn't just running an errand, it was an event. It was the unofficial, undisputed kickoff to fall for the whole community. People felt a real, profound emotional connection to this place.
Now, let's look at Section 2, the art of the press.
A single day for the cider maker requires just an unbelievable amount of care at every single step. First off, it all starts with the meticulous sorting and washing of the fresh fruit. Step 2, grinding those apples down into pomace. That leads directly to Step 3, which is pressing that juice through traditional racks. And finally, Step 4, filtering and actually hand-bottling the fresh cider. It's a highly physical, incredibly sensory process that's absolutely crucial to preserving that authentic flavor.
Now, I mentioned the word pomace in that second step, and let's clarify what that actually is. Pomace is essentially the pulpy residue of crushed or ground apples that you get right before the pressing stage. Grinding the apples into this specific, pulpy consistency is absolutely vital before the heavy pressing even starts. And keep in mind, they aren't using sleek, computerized modern equipment for this. No way. They're relying on century-old machinery and handwritten family recipe books sitting right there on worn-out workbenches. But hey, it's not just about the antique machinery, right? It's about the ingredients. To nail that perfect signature flavor, the cider maker works super closely with local orchard owners. They're carefully mixing tart heirloom apples with sweet dessert apples. This takes custom seasonal blending and, honestly, incredibly careful harvest timing. So every single gallon of cider is quite literally a liquid reflection of the local orchards and generations of intense craftsmanship. The cider maker sums this up so beautifully, saying, "No two harvests are exactly alike. That's what keeps every season interesting." I mean, that hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It completely captures why mass-produced juice fails to replicate that distinct, hyper-local flavor profile year after year. When you grab a bottle from a mega grocery store, it's engineered to taste exactly the same, 365 days a year. But here, the flavor actually tells the story of that specific year's rain, sun, and soil. Moving on to Section 3, Tradition Meets Modern Industry. We're currently seeing a really deep tension in the industry. On one side of the ring, you have the family cider mill. They rely on heirloom varieties, precise seasonal timing, and a deep focus on community. But they're up against these massive commercial beverage companies that churn out mass-produced juices, offer year-round availability, and, sadly, contribute to the decline of family orchards. So this meticulous, seasonal craftsmanship is basically in a constant tug-of-war with year-round convenience. We have to look objectively at the forces driving this shift because, honestly, it's not just about consumer preference, it's about survival. Climate challenges are making harvests way more unpredictable. Rising operating costs are squeezing already thin profit margins, and changing consumer habits mean people are just more likely to grab a cheap plastic bottle off a shelf. This whole combination has left a lot of once thriving rural processing buildings completely abandoned, with their orchards sitting empty. Looking at those abandoned buildings, the aging owner offers this really profound thought. He says, "You can bottle juice anywhere. You can't bottle a harvest season." And wow, that really gets to the heart of the matter. When an independent mill shuts down or turns into a commercialized tourist trap, we're not just losing a drink. We are losing a tangible, shared experience. We're losing a real piece of rural American heritage.
Let's explore that in Section 4, More Than a Drink.
This mill does so much more than just make cider. It serves a whole array of vital community functions. We're talking school field trips where kids actually get to watch the apples being pressed. We're talking harvest festivals with warm apple cider donuts. Who doesn't love those? It hosts pressing demonstrations, seasonal markets, and acts as an economic anchor that actually supports the remaining local orchards. The mill preserves memories just as much as it preserves apples. It functions as this irreplaceable generational gathering space where neighbors come together to share stories every single autumn. Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, The Next Harvest. As the aging cider maker looks toward the fourth or fifth generation, the future is, well, pretty uncertain. The younger family members are facing a massive challenge. First, they have to decide if they even want to continue the family operation. Then they have to figure out how to preserve those delicate heirloom apple varieties. And perhaps the trickiest part of all, they're tasked with this intense balancing act, navigating incredibly strict modern food safety laws while trying to keep century-old wooden presses running safely. It's a really heavy burden to carry a family legacy like that. And as late autumn eventually rolls in, the final load of apples gets pressed. The machinery slowly powers down, empty wooden crates are stacked away. The mill grows quiet as the last leaves drift gently to the ground, leaving the freshly bottled cider resting quietly on wooden shelves. Winter begins to settle across the bare apple trees stretching all the way toward the horizon. Seeing this mill power down for the winter brings up a really vital question for all of us. As modern industry expands, what's going to happen to the nostalgic local traditions and gathering spaces in your own community? Take a second to reflect on your own local history. Think about what it takes to protect the unique craftsmanship in your own backyard before it gets entirely replaced by a mass-produced alternative. I want to leave you with this final, summarizing thought from our source material. The last family-owned cider mill reminds us that the richest traditions, like the finest cider, are created by blending generations of hard work, patience, and a deep appreciation for the harvest. Every harvest eventually comes to an end, right? But the traditions they create can continue long after the leaves have fallen. It does leave us wondering, though. 50 years from now, will we still be tasting the harvest, or just a memory in a plastic bottle? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.